Good afternoon, fellas. Hope you guys are doing well wherever you're joining us from across the country. And obviously, we are not just Australia where we have members. We've got members all across the world, which is pretty fantastic. It's my name's Liam. For anyone who doesn't know, I know we're jumping on YouTube and our public platform. So if you're new to what we're doing, let me just give you a bit of an overview. We're the Australian Dads Network. We're a charity across Australia. And we've been operating for about 7 years now, supporting dads and families across the country. And our big mission is really just to connect as many dads and community in their community as possible to be able to make the best impact that we can and help dads and families from across the country become the best versions of themselves. Because we know through us doing our work and supporting ourselves and each other, that we can support our families better and our community at large, which is bloody exciting thing to see and an experience as we hear from the guys inside of our community. Almost 3,000 guys inside of our private dads only community on Facebook. Every day there's some form of testimonial or acknowledgement to the guys that are in there supporting each other and making a difference. And that's for me, that originally almost 7 years ago pushed the button on this Facebook group wondering, I wonder if anyone's going to join, to now is pretty special to see what kind of impact we're having as a collective. Not just me, definitely not just me. It's the collective group. And as you guys all know, we're herd animals. We enjoy to be with each other and supporting each other. It's a marvelous thing. Today, as you guys know, we're going to get straight into this topic, which has been probably a long time coming. We had a chat with HNT Legal's Maria Valenzuela some time ago on the podcast. We also have done a stream with her, and it was pretty. It was a pretty good amount of feedback that we received to say that it was helpful, and obviously since then, which has been, I think we're going on a couple of years now, that Australian Dads Network and HNT Legal have been partnering up to be able to support dads inside of our community. And for the guys that do reach out and get connected with the team at HNT Legal, the responses have been phenomenal as well. The work that they do to be able to support dads, in particular in crisis situations where they're just dads in our community are going, I don't know what to do. This has just happened. What do I need to do? And it's straight on the call. And pretty much every single time when I connect a guy, Maria has responded within an hour to either my email and enabled that call to happen with the dad. So it's pretty special that we've been able to connect with an organisation that has so much experience, knowledge, and skills, and just a dedicated passion for supporting dads and in the community. And for someone like myself that I didn't think that I didn't know when I first started this what family law was. I didn't know to the depths of the challenges that can be faced when in that space, and the confusion that can come from when you're in there. It's not until being in this community and hearing some of the stuff that happens inside of this space that it just it really tugs at your heartstrings when you hear some of the stories. And so this is another reason why we wanted to have this conversation. We felt like there was a need for this to happen now, as more and more conversations keep happening and more confusion sets in, and frustration is another big emotion that comes from this space in the family law space, but also obviously in other areas that we're going to tackle beyond that today. So I'm really excited to have Jabba and Jack. We call him Jabs, which is his best name. We'll get them in the stream in a second. But before we start, I want you to really, for the guys that are jumping on, and as you do, please add your questions in. We've got a couple sitting here, and I know that there's a few more that you guys are going to jump on as we go. Send them through, put them in the chat, and I'll share them, and we'll get these guys to answer them. But before we do that, let's bring these fellas on, and we'll start a bit of a chat and get a bit of an intro going here. G'day, fellas.
How you going?
How are you, Liam? You good?
I'm good. Welcome to our first live stream for 2023. It's been a long time coming, but the demand is out there, and here we go. We're going to supply them with the goods for the listeners and the viewers across the country to be able to get a little bit of information around this, which is a tough topic, but I think we're going to be able to provide them with some resources or some tips and ideas on how to navigate through it if they're in it, or if they do make it into that space, unfortunately. So how about we just introduce ourselves, starting with you, Jack. Let's give us a bit of a rundown. Who are you, where are you, and what do you like doing on the weekends? It's coming up to the weekend, so
pleasure to be here, Liam. So yeah, I'm Jack Dunn from HNT Legal. I'm the criminal solicitor. So I deal with everything and anything, which means murders to drink drives. I do it all. ABOs is something it's a big topic, and it's a big issue that I deal with frequently, almost daily. And on the weekends, if I'm not drinking a beer, I'm boxing. So yeah, best of both worlds there. And I suggest don't do both at the same time. Terrible idea.
Yeah. Boxing can be hard enough, and then to have something extra in the belly, not a great idea. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. I'm also into my boxing, and I don't mind a beer from time to time as well. So it's a shame we're on the opposite end of the country, but hey, one day we'll get
never say never.
Not too late.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Awesome. Cool. And Jab, speaking of boxing,
boxing these clients out, No, so I'm the family law solicitor here. I've been here for almost 1.5 years, working under Maria. So together we tackle everything: parenting, cross-vetting with criminal matters with Jack, property, child support, you name it, we're there to help. I have about 3 years experience in that. Before that, I was a commercial lawyer, so that assists with navigating through these issues, to giving another lens of, the outcome and possibilities. Like Jack, I'm avid gym junkie, actually. Not boxing, but CrossFit.
Nice.
CrossFit
Nice.
up. I love a drink also.
But realistically, the way we work is we work in tandem, because often more than not, ABOs, obviously you've got criminal side of it. There may be criminal charges attached to it. But then there's always, unfortunately, in the breakdown of any relationship or family dynamic, property and children disputes. So we got to work pretty closely together. We do have to work separately, but generally in tandem. So we're a 1-2 punch, essentially.
I like it. I'm enjoying the theme that we're starting to naturally and organically create here.
We can't help it. It's just we sit next to each other at work as well, so it doesn't help.
It's constant. We're in separate rooms right now, but
for this we thought we'd separate.
Yeah, it's good for the signal, but it's also good for your safety. So I appreciate that. Yeah, I do appreciate you guys jumping on here, and I think just for the guys that they're going to jump on at least live or watch the recording, I think we just get straight into it. Hey,
beautiful.
I'm just following, I suppose, the process, or what may happen when somebody would come towards your table. I would imagine, Jack, you would be probably the first one that an issue that would be escalated to the point where then maybe you would come in. Is that true to the process?
Yeah. So realistically, there has to be some sort of allegation or some sort of conduct or something mounting to what the police deems an offence in a domestic setting. So say there's been a fight between spouse and husband over bills, whatnot. Then the argument's been overheard by, say, the neighbour. The police get called. And then what generally happens more often than not, the police assume or draw an inference that the man is the aggressor. And then they're either subsequently arrested. And that's generally where I come in and take instructions from the client. And I provide them with some advice as to what to say and what not to say. For everyone out there, it's important that if you are arrested, that you give the police your identity and nothing more than that. You're not answering any questions unless there's a lawyer present. And more likely than not, the lawyer won't be present for the interview, because there's legal technicalities where the right to silence can be used against you at a later date. So unfortunately, you'd go through the first part of this ordeal by yourself. If you remain silent, though, that cannot be used at a later date against you. Then what happens is the police make a determination as to whether or not you're going to be granted bail, or whether or not there are going to be further charges laid. So you got two examples here. You've got one where there's been an assault where the husband's allegedly pushed his wife after an argument. The police more than likely will lay an AVO and they'll lay a common assault charge. So what happens from there is you'd receive a court date, you go to court, and pending that, you provide someone like myself with instructions as to what actually happens. From that stage, you get what the police call the brief of evidence. So in most cases, it's the witness or the victim themselves or the alleged victim providing a video statement about what may or may not have happened. Before we get to that stage, though, it's important to note that an AVO isn't a criminal conviction. It's a court order. And generally speaking, when they're laid on an interim or provisional basis. So what that means is it's a temporary court order. But what it does mean is that you have to follow or comply with those orders to a T, and there's no excuses. So for instance, if the police determine that there's a no contact provision and both parties live together, well, unfortunately, for the person that the order is upon, they're going to have to move out of home. So this is where it's important to get in contact with the solicitor as soon as you can. We can make alternate arrangements. We can also go to court and argue on your end why an order should be varied so that a contact provision is removed and thus allowing you to remain in the home. Because there's been situations where there's been a blow up or an allegation, and unfortunately it's the guy who's generally the breadwinner is kicked out and he's then stuck paying for a hotel room or an Airbnb, but then he's still got to pay a mortgage. And the problem that arises from that is, unfortunately, with the court systems and the way they are, not just in New South Wales where we are, but in Queensland, Western Australia, South Australia, Tasmania, and the Northern Territory, your day in court, you're looking at it probably about a year and a half from the first court date. So it's important to, in any instance, go and speak with a lawyer as soon as you can. Your right to silence is paramount. Maintain that right, no matter how difficult the police will be. And I do know we live in a world where it's okay for the police to lie to you, but it's not okay for you to lie to the police. They will lie and they will say things to try to get you to make certain admissions to things that may or may not have happened. But anything that you say will be used against you at a later date. And unfortunately, even if we're defending the allegation, you make my job that little bit harder if things were said that didn't really happen.
Oh, man.
I know it's a lot, but that's really the reality of it.
And I suppose from me sitting on this this side, listening to what you've just spoken there, that's in the moment, you know. And I definitely am someone who's very much in touch with emotions, both myself and of others, and that all of that you've just mentioned to me, I try and put myself in that position, and
yeah,
that emotional content or context that somebody is in at that moment, it would be hard to replay that stuff in your head and go, oh, what I should and shouldn't say or do.
And that's one of the problems. We need to educate men, women, just people in general about that right, because what happens is in a highly emotional situation, whether you're an emotional person or not, you're not going to necessarily remember to be quiet. And some people get on the back foot and they get aggressive and they start saying things. And sometimes they do say things they don't mean. But the problem is when it's recorded, the police use it against you. And I can tell you, they never record something which is going to be in your favor or for an optimal outcome for you getting your story out. So yeah, it's one of those murky situations, but you've just got to have enough temperament or control of your emotions at the time to realize that if something like this unfolds, it's not going to get resolved overnight. It's not going to get resolved if your partner or your loved one or family member goes to the police and says, hey, I don't want anything to happen any further. What happens now is it's not like America where the charges get dropped. It just doesn't happen. Once a report is made or an incident is reported upon, the police have the power to enact and continue their proceedings. I have cases where clients or victims, alleged victims, don't turn up to court and they still will try and run the matter without that person because they've got a recording from the night in question or the day in question. So again, that's why once the ball starts rolling with these things, you need to be quiet. You need to ask for the opportunity to speak with the solicitor, and then we can get the ball rolling in terms of what evidence they're going to use against you and what's your case. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, these matters, They're difficult because they're one-on-one. And by one-on-one, I mean they're generally your word versus your partner or ex-partner or family member. And unfortunately, because of the wave of domestic violence and the issue that is prevalent in the country, magistrates and judges, whether we like it or not, they tend to favor one side. And unfortunately, it's not the defense perspective.
Mm. And that's the challenge that we find ourselves in when we're supporting dads. Obviously, in the Australian Dads Network, is it's such a challenging dynamic. But for that, again, that emotion that comes with all of that, the distance, the separation, and the confusion, the guys are really struggling. And so, can I just want to put in here, because I think we missed it at the start, is just obviously a caveat that this stuff is that we're talking about today is not is just of general nature and not to be taken as specific advice for your circumstance if you are going through this. So just running that along there. So just anyone who is going through a specific challenge at the moment in this space, then please, like Jack said, reach out to your legal team. And if you don't have one and you're struggling, obviously we'll give the details of HNT Legal throughout this chat.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, guys. Whether it's myself and my firm or somebody else, look for someone that is going to back you up, but look for someone that's going to listen. So obviously, us lawyers, everyone thinks we're money hungry and greedy. I'm telling you this, I wouldn't be a criminal lawyer if I was about the money. But it is a matter of if you've concerned or if you've got concerns, you're better off to raise them with someone that knows what they're doing rather than to take matters into your own hands and think you can handle it. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, yeah, this is your life. And for some of you, for all of you dads, it's your kids' lives as well that are going to be greatly affected by these proceedings, whether they're just an AVO or whether they're criminal charges there. So it's really important. And I'd stress this, and this is something that needs to be out there as well. So an AVO isn't a criminal conviction. And I know a lot of guys, if you're a FIFO worker or you need security clearances and that sort of thing, it's really paramount that you don't have an AVO for those reasons. Good examples of this, an AVO will you will not be able to get a shooting license for at least 10 years. You will not be eligible for certain security clearances. So if you work for the government or you work on a mine, that's you gone. You won't be able to working with children's check. If the kids are on the AVO, there is no way you'll be able to go to the footy, train your kids footy, soccer, dancing, gymnastics, whatever it may be. You won't be in a position to apply for those without people questioning the validity of whether or not you should be able to do that. That's so important to contact a lawyer as soon as something goes down or as soon as something's alleged. Contact a lawyer, maintain that right to silence, and then let us do the groundwork and the grunt work to make sure that there's an optimal outcome. And again, the AVO and my Jabs can help out here. What is generally used as a tool or a mechanism for family law proceedings. So that's why, again, in the breakdown of any relationship or family dynamic, it's important to seek independent advice, not only in the criminal and AVO part, but in the family law proceedings as well, because that's what it's effectively become now, as a tool for people to manipulate.
That's and sucks, especially when the kids are involved. That's the big kicker, right? And so I'm going to chuck I think this question will be very relevant to this. I'm going to chuck this in here, and then after this, we'll go over to Jabs, and we can get a bit more detail around the family law and whatnot. So let's just have a look at this question here, coming from one of our members in the community. What are some practical steps fathers can take to protect their rights and maintain meaningful relationships with their children when facing a restraining order or family law challenges? So if you were to say, like, the top three things in a nutshell, because obviously we've covered a number of these already. What would be, just if we just go 1, 2, 3, if there was 3? I don't even. I think there's obviously a lot more than that. But like, what would be your top? Let's go.
One is patience. You got to understand that nothing's going to get resolved overnight. 2 is to ensure that you speak to someone that knows what they're doing. And 3 In today's day and age, the legislation provides for a condition in AVOs recognised in all states and territories for meaningful time between parties. So whether or not you're allowed to make contact with your ex-partner or partner, there's condition 6 in the New South Wales AVOs, which allows for you to maintain that quality time with your kids. Generally, a parenting plan or agreement is reached. And notwithstanding that, if there are already family law orders in place, they override any AVO, whether it's in any state or territory. So there's your 3.
Nice one. Awesome. Well, that we might just go over to Jabs now, because I can see him eagerly awaiting us to chat. He's hanging out in the back there. Where is he? Where's he gone? There he is.
He'd be around somewhere.
There he is.
No, I'm jumping out of my seat here, ready to go.
Awesome. Thanks, Jack. Hey, we'll bring you back in a second, mate. But let's go over to Jabs. Hey, mate. Welcome into the ring.
Beautiful. like the analogy you're using there. Look, to echo what Jack said, strategy-wise, it's going to be a battle in the family law proceedings. The moment they allege family violence, you're going uphill, right? It's going to be a constant battle. So what's important for you is don't commit yourself to a position beforehand. You have the right to silence, and you have the right to legal representation. So when you're getting questioned, you don't have to give any details besides your date of birth, your name, your address. Everything else, right to silence. No point committing yourself to a position that we then have to try to fix down the track. The next thing is you want to come and see a lawyer just to give you your rights and obligations. Like Jack said, a family law order will override an AVO or a restraining order. What we can usually in the restraining orders, there's usually conditions in there that say you can only communicate through lawyers or some other means that's agreed in writing between you both. So essentially what you can do is you can come to lawyers and we can actually sort out what's called a parenting plan if there's no parenting orders in place. And that parenting plan can then be signed between you both to actually go and visit the children in accordance with whatever the conditions are while you're contesting it. The third thing I would say is the family court, just because there's a restraining order in place, it's more of a final issue determination. And what I mean by that is in order to actually assess whether family violence was likely to occur, that's not going to be contested until a final trial, which is about 2 years down the process. By then, clients are going to be fed up with the whole process. There's going to be a lot of costs involved. So we always push for mediation. So what that means is then we go to a third party and we get some mediation involved. And we essentially just work out the process and try to come to a set of consent orders that compromise both parties, that essentially just reflect both parties' sides and reflect the best interest for the children. So that's what I would suggest in terms of the 3 recommendations. Don't commit yourself to a position the first thing during the investigation process, because it's just going to be a struggle from there. See a lawyer, because sure, there's no contact conditions in there, but I currently have a case in Western Australia where he's actually breached the order because she reached out to him and then he responded. Right. So in that situation, sure, he wasn't the one actually reaching out to her. He was responding to her message. The police still took it as a breach because there was no contact provision. So now we're contesting that in Western Australia. And this bloke, he works in the mines and he used to work in the airport. He does a lot of cross-vetting. So what's important is that is a clean record. So right now we have to try to get spent conviction, which means doesn't show up on his criminal record and everything like that. So it's better to just write back to her in that situation saying, speak to my lawyers, or I'm arranging legal representation. I'll be in touch with you soon. So that's my advice to you in terms of combating the conditions on the AVO and trying to still maintain that meaningful relationship with the children.
Wow. And again, same as Jack. there's
so much. There's a lot
so
to
much
consider.
there.
Yeah, there's a lot to consider.
Exactly. And again, it's clear as to why it is so frustrating to be in a situation like this, but also which can be for some people a real challenge when the relationship dynamic is so poor that it's hard to have any sort of amicable sort of conversation or any sort of positive conversation. And so to have to have people on your side like you guys would be a massive ease of that burden or stress because to have such a challenging relationship, if that was the case where you couldn't communicate or whatever was happening was just so toxic that you couldn't even have any conversation. That stress is so high that to have people in your corner like you guys is if not necessary, it's very close to being necessary. Because to try and do this by yourself amongst all that challenge and that stress would be, I couldn't imagine. And I can really see now, based off of this conversation that we've already had over the last 20 minutes, how challenging and almost like I said, going uphill. It could seem like a constant battle until such time as there's a successful outcome.
And look, I completely get it. Look, the male clients that I deal with, I'm perfect individuals, right? They just want to feel heard, right? It could be total lies what she's gone to the police and said, right? Total lies in her court material that she's filed and everything about that family violence allegations. But it's until you actually get to that trial in court where it's all going to be determined. And that's what the frustrating part is. So we're here to actually assist in taking you out of that process, but thinking big picture ahead, which means going through mediation, saving you on costs, and getting that agreement in place where essentially, kind of rejects all of her family violence allegations, what she's seeking, and just like getting on with life, moving on with everything.
Yeah. There is a quick question, which is, I suppose, fairly easy to answer, potentially. I'll just pop this up here for you. Is family law a national law? I suppose.
Yeah, look, in Western Australia is actually the only state that has its own Family Law Act, which it abides by. All the other states, it's federal. So the federal law applies to New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, everywhere else, except for Western Australia. You guys have your own act. But the provisions are essentially the same, like the best interest principles, family violence allegations, everything's all in there. It's just a different act that governs it.
Okay. So for anyone who's in WA who obviously wanted to seek support from you guys, that wouldn't be an issue. You just would have to
issue at all.
plug and play the WA Act instead.
No issue at all. I have 4 matters in Western Australia right now. So and they're all good guys. They're all actually working the mines. And unfortunately, there's all these family violence allegations against them. They're fed up with the process. I'm fed up with the process personally, because you can tell the lies that are just, they abuse the system at the end of the day. Essentially, a lot of them do. It's sad to say, but they abuse the system. But it is what it is. We try our best to keep our guys at bay, because anything you do can essentially be a breach of the order. Anything you do can essentially intimidate that individual, even though there's no intention from your half on that. Even through legal correspondence, I've had some cases where I chose to be stern in the correspondence because it was the only way to get through to the other side. And then the other side's lawyer wrote to me saying, oh, that's family violence through legal correspondence, like your client's exhibiting family violence through that. And, they chuck every argument at you. It didn't go far in court, but I mean, they'll try to get you every way they can. And unfortunately, in family law, they run with an argument. They'll chuck every single argument at you. It's just important to ignore, excuse my language, ignore the bullshit. You know what's true, and you'll have your day in court. It's just important that you stay cool, calm, collected throughout the process.
Ignore the bullshit and stay focused on the big picture.
Any takeaway today? Ignore the bullshit.
Awesome. I'm going to chuck another question up here because a couple are coming through. So let's see this one. Anonymous guy. Child support is ridiculous. My child support jumped $300 for my son who just turned 13. My son's mum doesn't work either, which I don't know how she gets away with that either. Not so much a question, but I suppose more of a statement. I'd imagine you hear.
I agree, it's ridiculous.
A lot of this stuff. Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Look, there's things you can do. I'm assuming he's on some sort of child support assessment from the agency, where they've actually jumped it to $300 per month for that. There's some things you can do. You can apply for an application for review. So I'm assuming the mum, because she's not working, she's probably on single parent payments, government pensions, that type of stuff. So I would recommend that you actually do a review telling them to actually investigate the mother's position. And there might be some reduction in that $300 because I think she might be on some sort of government benefits, which they take into account. There's some things you can do also to reduce your child support. Essentially, child support, for anyone who doesn't know, it's based on your adjusted income, so your tax return. And then it's also based on how much time you actually spend with the child, and how they calculate that is overnight time. So if mum has 100% of overnight times with the son or with the child, your child support is going to be higher. Along with that, if your income's at a higher level, it's gonna be skyrocketed, and then that depends if mum works also. The second thing you got to so this is some things you can do. The first is obviously fight for some more time for your child. That's my first protocol. Fight for some overnight time. That will reduce it. The second is you can start doing charitable donations because they're like a tax deduction. Of course, this is just like I said before. This is isn't specific advice. Again, talk to your tax accountant. We're not experts in that area, but yeah, that's another option. The third is, I mean, if you have the means to do it, you can start your own business. That technically you can control how much money you actually earn. And yeah, I mean, there's options around it, but there's options around it, but always do that application for review if you think the mum's hiding some sort of income, because the child support agency is only going to know what the mum reports to them.
That is another big topic that comes up in our community a lot. Is my income's dropped or hasn't changed yet. Now I'm asked to pay a bunch more, and
and unfortunately, the obligation's on the father to actually alert child support about the actual change in circumstances from him. So if you're not alerting them, you're going to be the one who's going to be having to cough up that $300 or $600 extra because they don't know that you've lost your job or you've taken a pay decrease. So it's the obligation's on you to actually go and tell them that.
Awesome. What do you think is one of the biggest, I suppose, the biggest hurdle for a guy to go through at this particular time? Like, so they're in seeing you. What do you see as being the most common thing that a guy is not necessarily relating to their obviously the personal situation? We can assume that it's pretty challenging, but what is the common theme that when a guy is talking to you about the situation, what is that theme? Maybe it's an emotion, maybe it's a word, or what do you see as being that common theme from your clients?
Frustration's the common theme I see. They're frustrated the fact that they have to now go through a whole criminal court process about allegations that are most likely not true. They're frustrated that this is restricting their time with the children, which is above all, a lot of my male clients, they just want to have time with the children. They don't want to, contest everything. They're frustrated with the whole family law process also, which is a big one. I think some reforms need to take place because it's not until you get a final trial, which is potentially 2 years down the track from when you start proceedings, if it gets to that situation where all of the family violence allegations are actually going to be tested and found to be either true or not true. So yeah, frustration just across the board.
And I just had this other comment just come in, which is another child support one. We're okay to chuck that in there. And Jack, I can see you in the background there, mate, in the green room, just chilling out. So if you do want to jump in and say anything, just put your hand up there or wave at me, and I can chuck you in at any stage. Regarding child support, I pay mum a set amount each fortnight, but now I have started depositing money into my kids' personal bank account. Should my child support be reduced? Kids are 11 and 8.
It's definitely that's something you need to put through a review with the child support agency. I would definitely raise that with them because that's child support money is going into their bank accounts. And mums, it's like double dipping essentially. So yeah, you need to report that and you need to tell the child support agency to look into that.
Okay.
I can send through the link for an application for review if I put it through the comment section or.
Yeah, if you access the comments on your side, definitely chuck it in there and we can send that across for sure. The guys will see that.
Yeah, beautiful. And there's some other things you can do. You can apply for a change in circumstances. There's some things where they can credit you also for child support. So, for example, if you're the person paying the joint mortgage, there's a non-prescribed agency payment, that's what they're called, where they can actually credit you 30% up to that. There's some things also like urgent medical expenses. If there's urgent school fees and expenses, everything like that. There's a set of regulations that you can actually be credited for. And again, I'll chuck that into the chat for you guys.
Awesome.
Because that's not actually spoken about. It's not actually spoken about, the fact that you can reduce your child support or be credited up to 30% for you paying the mortgage when, mum leaves the house with the children and, she's living rent free with someone else.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, chuck that in the chat. That'd be great.
Yeah,
thanks for the questions, fellas. I'm gonna bring Jack in here because we don't like leaving people out in the corner there.
I'm back here.
Background. And I'm going to chuck another question that's just come in, which may be a Jack question. Let's see. I'll open it up to both of you guys. My ex took my kids across state in January. I haven't seen them in months. What can I do to bring them back here?
Yeah, look, that's a family law one.
That is.
So usually what you do is you'd file an urgent recovery application. The more time that the children are in the other state, your recovery application probably doesn't have a lot of merit. So you should really act in the heat of the moment for that recovery application. If significant time has passed, you'd have to do a relocation application. And essentially that's the same thing, but like I said, it's going to be a final trial situation where you're probably looking 2 years down the track for an outcome. And essentially the argument you'd have to put forward is that the children, their best interest is for them to reside in Western Australia. And the courts will look at their relationships, their schooling arrangements, whether, they're not adjusting properly in the other state, wherever they are. So you're looking at getting some child support, some family reports done about those sort of things also.
And sorry, did you say it could take 2 years for that process to happen?
If you're doing an urgent recovery, it tends to be listed urgently. That's the idea of it. So within 4 weeks of when you file, you probably get that urgent listing. But if it's a relocation matter, it can be dealt with also on an interim basis, which means not necessarily at the final stage, but at the interim middle of it. But you're looking about 6 months down the track.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and the longer they stay there, unfortunately, the more accustomed they get. And then it's not likely for the court to return them to make them come home because they're like enrolled in school, they're starting friendships, mum's settled in there. So my advice to you is I would file for an urgent recovery while you still can. Alternatively, you'd have to do a relocation application.
Yep. And in the meantime, making sure that you don't do anything that's going to jeopardize any risk of that happening as well.
It's a very common tactic used by parties where, for instance, in February, my client got bail refused on domestic violence allegations. She then took them, so they live in the Western Sydney area. She's taken them up to the North Coast, sort of Port Macquarie area, which is probably 2.5, 3 hours away, and just stopped contact with his family, and he couldn't contact her at all. It's a pretty common tactic by mothers in all situations, but unfortunately, like Jabs has explained, it doesn't resolve itself overnight, unfortunately. And what you got to try.
Sorry, Jack, to jump in, but the argument I usually see in the reasons as to why mum left the state with the children was because of family violence.
Yes.
And then they'll take out a restraining order in that state, and then you're stuck contesting a restraining order in a different state. So, I mean, it's like I said, it's an uphill battle, frustration. But yeah, try to get that urgent recovery application in while you still have the time.
If you have those concerns, obviously we don't know your situation, but if you had those concerns that she was going to jet off, it's a sooner than later thing. That's where you need to speak to someone like Jabs and get that ball rolling, because it's going to take some time, but then at least you can preemptively plan for it. And again, it's an issue that concerns people even traveling overseas. You've dealt with that before, haven't you, Jabs?
Oh, yeah. Hate convention countries. I mean, there's no right to just take the children without valid reason. And the fact that they can do it and then be shielded by, you know, arguments such as family violence allegations and everything, which may be warranted in the circumstances. But the moment family violence is thrown into the mix, it's just a different ballgame.
Yeah.
The courts take a cautious approach. It's not very likely that they will actually grant it on an interim basis, and they may just rule for the children to stay with mum in that other state while the matter proceeds to a final trial, because they're not in a position to actually test the evidence at that interim stage. So there's a lot of factors at play, and it's unfortunate. That's just the realizations of the system at this stage. So yeah.
And so there's another couple of questions that are coming along the way, but one that has just prompted me that we've experienced inside of the community is that the lawyer on the mum side has pushing things for them to say and mum to do that is essentially from and to be fair, like we only obviously get one side of the story as well, so it's we're sort of got the dad's side of the story. We don't know mum's side of the story, but from some of the conversations that we've had, mum is making stuff up and the lawyer is saying, say these things, do these things that are just not true. How, I suppose, two questions. Like one is obviously, actually no, it's only really one question. How is your relationship with the other side of
mate, worst enemies? Worst enemies, my worst enemies.
Yeah,
I'm going to deal with police officers that don't have law degrees and they're telling me the law, and I just go, leave me alone. You don't know nothing. But yeah, again, the relationships we have with the other side, it's really dependent. It's like anything. It's some are great, some are really good. Some police understand the plight and they just go, oh, this shouldn't even be at court. Whereas others are like, nah, he should be locked up. This is disgusting. And I'm like, she's making it all up, mate. Like, why are you prosecuting an innocent person? But yeah, it really is haphazard who you deal with. But unfortunately, in the family sector, Jabs has to deal with some.
The thing is with family law, your general rules of evidence. So there's a way you're meant to, act in court. You're meant to abide by these rules of evidence. No hearsay rules. It's all out the window in family court. Nothing applies. It's all out the window. So you have these family lawyers who are just mouthpieces for their clients, who will just say whatever they want, essentially, not acting within their duties to the court, which is their paramount duty. And just saying like blatant lies and just running with arguments that, aren't, there's no substance to them. There's no legal argument behind them. So I get frustrated with the lawyers because you can clearly see they're taking their clients for a ride. And then they're just delaying the whole process for everyone. It's a bit of a joke. Like I said before, the argument that I get from other lawyers when I'm harsh to them in correspondence, because I feel I have a right to be, because my client's being duped throughout the whole thing. The response I get back is, you're intimidating my client through legal correspondence, and I'm like, what? Like, take out a restraining order on me, then. Like, come on, do it. It's
that must be frustrating for you guys.
So the male clients cop it, but then we also cop it because the moment we get on the aggressive side, which only when it's warranted, of course, you're hit with that argument. And it's just like far out. You're got to come from all different ends. So like rule of thumb is act nice at the start, but be aggressive when you need to be aggressive.
Yeah. So the old we talked about before, the jab, right hook.
Yeah, that's it. Only pull them out when you need to.
I'm more fortunate though. So with my proceedings, I generally correspond with the police, and they give me a lump of evidence, which they think is their golden nugget of securing a conviction, essentially. And then my job is just to pick it apart. And 80-90% of the time, the evidence is just that ridiculous or just so unbelievable that once it is tested in court, the magistrate's rolling their eyes. A good example is I had a matter where she's alleged that my clients beat her up, grabbed the phone, thrown it against the wall and smashed it. And in cross-examination, she then proceeds to tell the police that she dropped the phone, she went to the shops and returned it, got it repaired, and then decided to hand it to the police after the fact. And the magistrate herself just couldn't believe why this had been a year and a half in the waiting for something that just didn't happen. And then it got better. She then doesn't remember the assaults. She also then tells the police she was on drugs at the time. But the police doing what they do and having to investigate, once an investigation unfolds, this is what happens. And unfortunately, there's poor blokes in this country that have to go through that. But he was a lucky one. We got him off that. It wasn't too hard in the office that day, but these are the situations people unfortunately face.
Yeah.
I think what's important also, Liam, what's important also is the fact that, you know, they can take out a restraining order at any point during the process. You know, I've had cases where it just starts as a property settlement between the parties, no family violence allegations raised or anything. 2 months down the track, she goes to the police, reports are made, and now my family law matters turned to a criminal matter. I haven't seen the guy in 2 months because he's with Jack. You know, like
we have a client exactly like that. It started as a property settlement, and now I've got all of these criminal charges dating back 5 years, and the poor guy is baffled. Like, I call him up to explain, like, this is what's happened, and he's like, he thinks I'm joking, and I'm like, I'm not, mate. Like, this is the situation you're in. Like, we got to fight this. And it's all over just a breakdown in a relationship and some people with a motive to try and get a one-up. And but that's what we do. We're here to sort of rectify those problems.
There's obviously a lot of social media and videos around the place of how what's the choosing words correctly. I suppose, how the family law system, the whole process is obviously skewed towards mum, or not obviously. I'm not going to say obviously. It, from what I see on my side, is skewed towards mum. And there is a comment here. I won't put it up across the screen, but I'll just paraphrase it. Is you know, dads seem to be very much always on the back foot in this system.
It's a comment, and I'll play devil's advocate here. And I think the problem with that, and unfortunately for us, is that over 80% of domestic violence related matters are men as the perpetrator. And it's unfortunate that someone who is being smeared with allegations that aren't true is in the same situation as someone who in Queensland, unfortunately, locks his wife and children in the car and then lights the car up and kills his family. But the problem we've got with that is that the system isn't exactly fair. The system is just. And that's why it's important for everyone listening that you need to get a lawyer. You need to understand your rights. You need to maintain that rights to silence so that in your context and in your situation, it isn't unfavorable. It's unfavorable when things don't go your way, when you start yelling at the police, when you try and breach the order, because we all know that you want to see your kids. We all know that you don't want this to happen, but unfortunately, when the snowball starts rolling down the hill, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. But unless you get people like us to intervene, it only gets bigger until it explodes, and then it's just a complete nightmare.
I think with the family court system, look, I see validity. I read the comment. I see validity in the comment, right? There's situations where it's unfortunate. I generally think the domestic violence way, like if it's genuine, there's a genuine risk there. And if it gets tried, you deserve to be punished, whatever it is, what it is. It's unfortunate that there's people out there who will actually just go through with it. It just tarnishes the whole thing. Yeah. What I'm seeing with the family court system though, is I'm seeing a lot of judges waking up to the lies and they're fed up with it. They're absolutely fed up with the females actually abusing the system. So they see it. It's just unfortunate they can't actually make their findings until that date at final trial.
And that's that issue, isn't it? Where like you have family law proceedings on foot, and then all of a sudden there's an AVO or there's a criminal charge out of nowhere, and they're two separate things. So the timelines are skewed, and that's where you're getting frustrated people and hurt people because they're like, well, I'm doing everything right, but yet this is still occurring. And unfortunately, because you've got that discrepancy in the jurisdictions, you've got to deal with them separately, even though that they're so closely related. It's not funny. It's more than often than not now that decision makers are sort of waking up to themselves and realizing that there are situations where people are abusing the process for the sake of ruining someone else's life just because the relationship didn't work out, just because they don't feel like they got enough out of the property settlement. But unfortunately, until everyone wakes up to that, we've just got to keep fighting the good fight, really. There's no other way to put it than sort of just take from today what we said, try and remain calm in a very emotional and hostile situation, and get the proper advice and the proper care that you need. Because again, these things take time. And yes, the legal costs are a burden, but you've also got to look at your mental health as well. There's too many blokes that are coming into our offices, and a lot of the WA cases that Jabs has, where they're completely defeated. And we're looking at really successful guys, but they're talking about suicide. They're talking about hurting themselves. They're talking about not wanting to live. And it's all over these allegations, which are more than likely false, which are preventing them from seeing their kids or living with their kids. But you just got to look at it like the bigger picture here is making sure you get legal representation, and then you're looking after yourself, because it's going to be a long, hard slog. It's going to suck. You're going to get frustrated with us. You're going to go, what the hell are they doing? But at the end of the day, if you're not looking after yourself, then your legal matters sort of going to be on the back burner as well. And that's where decisions can go astray, breaches can occur, and silly mistakes are made. So it's not just the legal system you've got to worry about. It's putting yourself in a good spot mentally, and it's putting yourself in a spot where you get to see your kids and you get to continue living your life, because your life isn't dictated by a court date or a court judgment, but your life is dictated by your actions. So you need to be in a place where you're able to make those actions and make the most appropriate actions that are going to benefit not just you, but your kids in the long run.
You know, at the end of the day, all my male clients, all the guys want is just time with their kids. That's what I see. That's all I see, and I'm advocate for it, fight for it. But like Jack said, they throw spanners in the works, and it's unfortunate that the process, which I think needs to be reformed, is the courts need to make their determinations about family violence sooner rather than later, because you're jeopardizing the time between the father and the children, like from the very beginning, and then they're not having any time up until, you know, interim hearing. And then if then it's probably going to be supervised time, because you can't even test the allegations of family violence. So I think there needs to be some sort of reform in place, which I think would benefit the system. But to say that, you know, it's very prejudicial to men, I wouldn't take it that far. I do think there are significant examples of that, but every case was terms to the circumstances.
Yeah, exactly right.
My clients, I vouch for them on a daily basis. I think they're top blokes, and they're just been handed the shit end of the stick, if I'm going to be completely frank.
Yeah. That's it's I think awesome way to sort of slowly bring this to this session to a close, to use I think that's a court term, isn't it? I think you know, Jack, you're spot on, and I'm glad you sort of were moving us towards this, and same as you, Jabs, as far as, you know, relating this to the kids and that time, and, you know, that mental health is a massive part of what we do inside the Australian Dads Network, and creating that connection to be able to remove that feeling of isolation that a lot of guys, not just going through this circumstance, but just in general life challenges that come their way. Not our fault that we have not grown up to learn how to manage our emotions or regulate our emotions or deal with those big challenges that come our way. A lot of us don't have that level of resilience to be able to, when things hit the fan, like, what do we do? And so for a lot of us, it's extremely challenging. And then you throw in something like this, which is, now I can't see my kids. Boom, like that's huge. And so I've no doubt that some of the challenges that you guys face just in those interactions with guys who are in their darkest moments plays its toll on you as well. So firstly, just want to say big props to you guys, and I thank you guys for doing that work that you do, because it is huge, and it is, although you're seeing that burden that a lot of guys are carrying as far as, you know, trying to navigate this challenge and go through all these hurdles and hoops, and the distance with their kids. You guys feel that too, and take that on. So I'm glad that I don't know if we recorded this at the start. I think we did, about the boxing and the CrossFit and stuff. It may have been on the recording. I can't remember now, but, you know, all those things helped hopefully to make it nice and easy for you guys to remove.
But also,
some of that,
Liam, the work you do the work you do behind the scenes, because not everyone can afford a lawyer. The work you do in actually supporting them and then bringing them to us where we can try to assist you and assist you guys through the process at an affordable rate where everyone, there's some proper form of representation. I think that goes a long way. So credit to you and the work you do. Because it's a battle. We need all hands on deck, man.
Yeah, it's
exactly.
Not one size fits all approach here. I think it comes down to having a community where people can bounce ideas, share their thoughts. We're not mouthpieces. We are legal reps, but at the end of the day, we're here to get a good result, and that good result is making sure that you get to see your kids, that you don't have that criminal record, and you get what's rightfully yours. But again, outside of that, there's a whole bigger picture to look at, which is your mental health and your happiness outside of the courtroom, because that's just one small part of your life. And once we get that out of the way, you've got the whole entire life of yourself and your kids to live. So, it's not just that walk in the park that everyone thought it was going to be. So, yeah, thanks for having us. Any questions or queries, I think the website has been shared. Call Jabs and I. We're like 7-Eleven, open all the time. Just call us. If you need a chat or anything, we have time. Believe it or not, a 15-minute, 20-minute, half an hour chat. If you're really stuck with stuff, we're happy to help and we can guide you in the right way. But yeah, don't be scared of pricing and that sort of thing. I think that's a really big issue with a lot of people. They go, hell, this is going to cost a lot of money. It's going to cost some money, but at the end of the day, you're paying for a skill and a service, which, like all of you men out there, we've all trained to do something. We're good at it. We don't mind getting paid, but at the end of the day, we're trying to look after you guys. And it's a pretty important thing. Your kids, your family, your happiness, they all interrelate, and we're just here to try and facilitate that continues with or without a partner in the future. So yeah, thanks.
Awesome. I just want to leave this. We've got a few minutes left. Would love to leave this on a good note, on a high. Think of the one of the best outcomes that you've received or you've been involved with in regards to this space. What is something that you can share that was an awesome outcome from one of your clients, and then we'll call it a close. You go first, whoever you want.
Mine, I always got to remember. I try and keep them PG. I had an instance. I had a family matter context where it was alleged that the mum was put a knife to the son's throat on 2 occasions. This allegation was put forth by the dad. So I'm just inversing at the hearing, fortunately for my client, unfortunately for me, I had to cross-examine an 11-year-old who then proceeded to tell the court that dad had told him to make it all up. The matter was chucked straight away. That poor lady hadn't seen her son in almost 2 years. Wow. 2 whole years. It was a good result. It really was, because the kid didn't really understand why he was there. Mum just wanted to see the kid. But yeah, that was probably one of the highlights. That was last year.
Wow.
I'll give you a great example. It's actually very, very recent. I'm actually waiting for judgment. And it's a Western Australia matter. I'm waiting for the judgment to be delivered. And if my client consents to it, I'll share it with all you guys, because I think it's going to be a really, really great judgment about family violence allegations and abusing the system from the wife in these proceedings. But anyway, essentially what happened was Western Australia couple, married for a couple of years, had some kids. Mum all of a sudden one day just picks up and goes to Queensland just with the kids. And it was actually a referral through you, Liam. So thank you for that. You got him on board with us. We started urgent recovery. We filed an urgent recovery application, I think on the day that you actually spoke to us. And went down for interim hearing. We got that quick interim hearing date. It was like 4 weeks out. During that 4 weeks, though, Mum goes and applies for a restraining order. So she threw it into the works. And then, like I said before, the judge at the interim hearing actually didn't grant the children to come back, even though we had the compelling evidence. But she left comments in there which said that essentially, hey, Mum might be lying, because what we did was we got these subpoena counselling notes that said there was no family violence. She wanted him back at the house and everything. So that's why I'm saying it's very important to keep your mouth shut at the right times, because you don't want to put yourself in a position where us as lawyers look at it and then it goes...
Don't make it harder, guys. Don't make it harder than it already is.
That investigation room with the police, just keep it shut. Don't commit to a position.
We know what we're doing. Trust us.
Yeah. anyways, so we lost the interim, which was understandable because they can't really rule on family violence allegations. But then we went to Queensland to fight the restraining order. And I'm fairly certain we'll win that one because the police prosecutor actually said, yeah, my client's a liar. And has no credibility whatsoever. So we're waiting for judgment on that. And then we're going to go back to the family court, submit that, and hopefully get the children back to Western Australia. So like you guys, my client was very frustrated with the process. He's been with us for about 2 years now. We're finally at the end where we're seeing results. And he went from being so frustrated to, actually enjoying his life now. So success story. I know the process and everything, you just go through it, but that's where we're here to help. That's where Liam's here to help. But you will get that outcome you get as long as you're truthful with yourself and you're consistent and your, disclosures and everything. So success story for me, recent one. So hopefully we get that judgment soon. I'll share it with Liam and Liam can spread it across everywhere.
We get jabs to rate it.
What was that? Say it again.
We get jabs to rate it.
Yeah.
Rate
Read
it.
the whole judgment for you guys.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
We'll just read the executive summary, maybe.
Yeah.
That's
She's
what
a
I've
liar.
always done. Yeah, it
She's a
seems to get
liar,
the
yeah.
gist of it. Yeah. Put it into Chat GPT for a summary as well. I think that's probably helpful. Yeah. All right, guys. Hey, I appreciate you taking the last 62 minutes with me to run over what is such a complex and challenging space, and I'm glad that there's and grateful that there's you two guys in here that are supporting dads in this space with such passion and energy, and it's actually making a difference. And so I appreciate you guys, your time, your energy, and I look forward to being able to speak with you guys again really soon, and maybe have this as a bit of a regular update on what you guys are up to. So thanks again. Say hi to Maria for us.
We will.
And
She's sick right
see
now,
you.
man. She's sick.
Yeah,
She's sick.
it sucks.
Yeah. But thank you for having us, Liam.
Yeah, appreciate it. And thanks for everyone's time listening.
Nice one, guys. I'll see you on the other side.
You will. Thanks, Liam.
All right, guys, and there we have the fellas from HNT Legal, Jabs and Jack, and appreciate their time, and I appreciate your time. If you're watching us live, thank you, and thanks for your questions, and also if you're watching this on the replay, don't forget to jump on to HNT Legal's website, htlegal.com.au. If you do need some support, if you're in the space challenging moment where you are concerned about what could happen if you're in this space, and then feel free to reach out to myself via Facebook, send us a message, and I can connect you directly with the HNT Legal team. And as you heard from Jabs, it can be quite a really quick process. And it's all about you supporting yourself, supporting the situation that you want to see at the end result. So really appreciate you guys jumping on board. If you have anything that you would like to see on inside this stream in future, please feel free to reach out. If you would like to be a guest on this podcast and this stream, then please feel free to reach out. We're here for you. We're here for the Dads Network. We're here for building communities and supporting each other so that we can all become the best versions of ourselves. Until next time, really appreciate you guys jumping on. My name is Liam Sorrell. See you again at another time. Take care.